Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beyond the Home Study podcast. This is where we have real conversations for foster and adoptive parents. We are so happy that you're back with us again and excited to have an adoptive parent with us to share her story. So, Laura Rose, I'll kick it over to you to introduce Kristi.
Yeah, guys, we are continuing on in the month of March, really just trying to address behavior and all you parents out there, we just really want you to feel seen. And so for this week's episode, we are bringing on Kristi Powell. Kristi is a mom of five, four of which are adopted internationally and are biological siblings. So that's really cool. And we're really excited to hear about her story. She is also an author of historical fiction, which y'all know Abby and I are like all into books and book clubs. So we're excited to check out her book. And you guys should definitely check out some of her books too. We can talk about that at the end a little bit. So, with all that mouthful, welcome, Kristi.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
We are so excited to have you. Can you tell us just start us out with like where are you in the world and what are the ages of your kids?
So I am in Kentucky, and my kids' ages are 12, 10, almost 9, 7, and 1 years old. That was a pop quiz.
I know, right?
It is every time. And then you're like, okay, can you give me their exact birthdays? And you're like, oh gosh, hold on.
Maybe.
Let me look at
And
my
then
notes.
which one of those is biological?
The youngest.
Okay.
Oh my
Okay.
goodness. Wow.
I was like trying to guess. I'm like, where is it in the lineup? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fun and I'm sure loud and crazy and wild all at the same time.
But yeah, yes, we have lots of life and joy and noise in our house
Yeah.
all the time.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. That's so fun. Well, tell us a little bit about how you even started thinking through adoption. Like, take us back however many years ago it was. Tell us a little bit of how that journey started for you.
Our story started 10 years ago. So my husband and I met and married and started trying to have kids, trying being the operative word. I was not able to get pregnant. And so we did some fertility testing, did some fertility treatments. And a week before my first IUI was scheduled, the world shut down because of the pandemic in 2020. And even though I was disappointed, I knew in my heart this was not the way God wanted this to happen. And so we just kind of moved into, prayerful, hands open to different possibilities. And I was scrolling on social media and I saw a picture of four little kids with hearts over their faces, and it said they needed a family. So I showed my husband and we talked about it and asked for more information. And every conversation after that, we just kept saying yes. And so from the time that we saw their picture in July of 2020 to bringing them home was just shy of a year, which is
Whoa.
really fast in the international adoption realm. They're from Brazil. And so it was this huge whirlwind. I did paperwork like it was my second job. And God provided in truly crazy, wonderful ways. And so we met them in June of 2021. We spent 6 weeks completing the bonding process and the adoption in Brazil. And then we brought everyone home. And so we went from 0 to 4, which was wild, but amazing at the same time. So they've been home with us for about 4.5 years now. And in 2024, God surprised us. I was able to get pregnant and had a baby girl. And she is everyone's like living baby doll. Everyone just adores her. So that's our story in a nutshell.
That is so fast. That's crazy.
They were waiting children. So everything was already, we didn't pursue any other children. We didn't look at any other files. So we just kind of went through the process just for them.
And they were through an agency already and they just already had rights terminated and were just ready for a family.
Correct. Yeah.
So, had you already started working with an agency prior to seeing their picture, or was it you saw the picture, you reached out, started it all right there?
Yes, yeah, we had
Wow.
not, talked about I mean, we had talked about it a little bit when we were dating. We both said, like, this is a desire that we had, but because, I was in my late 20s when we got married, and we knew, biologically, like, we need to figure out this part too. So you know, it just wasn't really even on our radar, and then we saw their little faces, and, we're like, "Well, they need a family, and we can give them that." And in some ways I feel like it was childlike faith, because we didn't really know what it was going to be like. Even though I
Mhm.
felt very prepared going in. I'd been a nanny for 5 years, second eldest of 8 children, babysat kids, church nursery. I'd been around kids my whole life, but something very different about becoming their parent, in another country, speaking another language. It was a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure. So we talk a lot about, kind of this like expectations versus reality. Can you just walk us through first, like, what were the expectations in your mind? Like, how did you think it was going to go when they came home?
I mean, I think because we spent so much time in Brazil, it was 6 weeks, and we kind of like burned through all those expectations even before we got home. Uh, because it was just like baptism by fire. Like, suddenly there was these four little strangers, because they were all strangers. We were all strangers to each other. And they were dependent on us, and we were mamãe e papai, mom. The orphanage, the social workers had done a really amazing job preparing them for it and taking care of them. We had done all the training, TBRI. We had talked to families who had adopted multiples. One of my dear friends from church, she had adopted two children, and two brothers. And so we had talked to them. But everyone's story is so different. And so going in, even though we had heard all these things and done all these things, it was kind of like starting from scratch to figure out, like, who are these kids? What do they need? How do we take care of them? How do we communicate with them? Um, because they were, you know, the oldest was 7 at the time, and she was speaking full sentences, and you know, she was just like at us, and we're like, Google Translate. uh, Later on, she told us, she said, you didn't answer me when I talked to you. You just kind of like would say just a few words back to me. And we're like, yeah, honey, we didn't understand you.
Oh.
I'm so sorry. Um, but we learned very basic Portuguese within like the first 2 weeks, just so that we were able to like meet their needs, and they could tell us, what they wanted and needed. And we spoke Portuguese at home for probably a good year and a half after we got home, because we were outnumbered. There were more Portuguese speakers in our home than there were English speakers for a while. So I struggled, like my nervous system like was completely overwhelmed like the first week. Like my husband carried us through that week. He did so much. The youngest was 2.5, and she would not leave my side. She would not let him do anything with her care or anything. And so like even though there were 4 children, I was very like attached to this little person who had just, her whole world had just changed. And so I don't fault her at all. But it was a big transition. And so that first week was hard to like figure out, how are we going to sleep, because they weren't sleeping? How are we going to eat, because I feel so anxious? And um, so it was an adjustment, but our agency did support us really well when we were there. Really grateful for our translator and guide. And so it was a lot, but we did have a lot of good support.
Yeah, I was wondering what support would look like in country like that because even, my story is that we adopted twins and we lived in California I was there for about 5 weeks, which in many ways was like very familiar to me because I had lived there before, but there were still so many things I was like, how am I going to figure this out and that out? And just these different things. But everyone around me spoke English. I had the same stores I could go to, all those different things were very similar. So as I'm hearing you say 6 weeks in a different country, I'm thinking, how do you even navigate? So what did support look like for you? I mean, physical, tangible support, but also, you know, support from the agency or others, like on what behaviors were looking like and things like that.
So we had a group WhatsApp text with our social worker, her supervisor, the children's social worker in Brazil, um, and our translator. And so that was kind of like our first go-to with like, hey, something's going on. We need some help. And our translator, Hajani, I love her so much. She was our translator for like all the official like court stuff that we did. It was during the pandemic, everything was shut down. So our court appearance was online. We couldn't really leave the house. Like it was a weird time. Like when we tell other people about our experiences, we're like, it's not going to be like this for you
Yeah.
guys, thankfully. But our translator was like the most like tangible in-person support for us. She would take me grocery shopping. She would run pickup stuff for us. She would take us out. She had us to her house one day, cooked us food. We would go to parks because that was one of the only places we could go with everything closed. And then she hired us a house cleaner, which like I just would not have been able to clean the house.
Mhm.
But we had a wonderful house cleaner who would come in and clean once a week. So really, really wonderful support while we're there. And then for behaviors and stuff, we had the kids social worker who had been with them the entire time that they had been in the orphanage's care. So she kind of knew their history and she knew them a little bit. So we could kind of go to her and be like, hey, this is going on. Or she would even tell us, like, this is really important to understand. And, please don't forget this part. And so it was, we still missed our family and friends in many, in some ways being a very spoiled American, like we didn't have water some days because there was a drought and then the water heater
Man.
broke a few times. And I'm like, how am I going to bathe these children?
Yeah.
Because in Brazil, they take a shower every day. And so I'm just like,
Really? Oh my gosh.
yes, yeah. But we made it through. And when we got home, it was this huge relief to my husband and I because we felt like we could finally exhale a little bit. We were in our like environment in our home. My in-laws were 2 minutes down the road. We had our church. So like for us, it was like this huge exhale, but then it was like a whole nother layer of change for our kids because they were in this new country where nobody spoke their language. And
They were out of their comfort zone.
exactly, exactly. And so even though we did see like behaviors and stuff pop up while we were there, they definitely like started amping up like after we started getting settled in and they felt safe enough to express those behaviors. So it was like a catch 22. Like we're really happy they're feeling safe, but oh my goodness.
Yeah, let's talk about those behaviors a little bit. And obviously, listeners, you all know we try to be very respectful about the children in general, but or just like about them. So we want to keep the behaviors kind of general for that reason. But can you still explain to us, like, you started you're like, oh, okay, these are more extreme behaviors. Like, what was going on, and give us a little glimpse into what that looked like.
Before I answer that, I just want to share my heart for a minute on how I'm approaching this topic of big behaviors. Because in the adoption and foster care space, we understand that a lot of these big behaviors stem from trauma. And trauma is something that happened to our kids. It's not their fault. And so I'm not talking about these big behaviors to bring shame or judgment. But it's hard on everybody. It's hard on the child who's experiencing these things. It's hard on the parents who are trying to keep everyone safe, trying to figure out like, how do we get through this? And so, like, when I talk about this, I'm especially cognizant because, like, I'm sure my kids are going to find this one day. So I want to make sure they know I'm not talking about this to like tattle on you or to make you feel bad about yourself. But as a parents, like we need help. Like we're grown-ups, but we need help sometimes. And so my hope is that by talking about it, bringing it out of the isolation, is that we can build some resilience for parents and um, hopefully that's going to lead to less disruption of care
Mhm.
and lead to healing. So
Mhm.
I wanted to share that real quick because it would be easy to make this like a complaint fest, to be like,
Yes.
what of all these things that I deal with? But that's not my heart at all.
No, we love that you're even saying that because that is always our heart as well, and we know, like, there are places where you can go and vent, and it's not really the healthiest way to do that, and we hope that this podcast is being used as a resource, as an encouragement, for other families, so we are right there with you.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much for making a safe space for this. I really am grateful for that. So, to answer your question about the behaviors that we were seeing, some of them were stress behaviors. So, we only saw it in those like first few months that we were together, and then they got better. And so that was like a big relief of like, oh, okay, like that was obviously like not going to be a long term thing. And then other behaviors we started seeing happen consistently. And that's, we're learning our kids, we're learning what their triggers are. We're learning, as they are learning more English and we're learning more Portuguese, they're able to tell us things that happened. And so it's like putting a puzzle together of all those things. And in many ways, we kind of had to like triage the needs and behaviors that we were seeing because there's so many of them. And so, like in the beginning, we had a child who couldn't feed themselves. And even though it was like age appropriate to do so. And so we spent like a year and a half in OT and feeding clinic. And thankfully, they can feed themselves now. Very grateful for that. So there was like stuff like that, like developmental delays. And then there was like the behavior stuff that was like, oh, wow, this is intense. And it sort of like developed like as the years went on. Um, we, one of my children had an autism diagnosis in Brazil. But when we met them, they said, well, we really don't think it's that anymore. The psychologist who's working with them said, we think this was just a result of the trauma that they experienced. And so we brought the child home thinking like, okay, like this is a neurotypical child. Everything's okay. We're going to have to deal with the trauma stuff. But um, we slowly began seeing like, okay, there's some pretty big differences here. And so we ended up doing some testing for ADHD and autism. And last year they were diagnosed with level 2 autism and ADHD. And that kind of like put a name to it. Like it put the words to it, but it didn't really make much of a difference for like us as parents because like we were still like very much in the trenches of how do we keep everybody safe because
Mhm.
things just kept getting more and more unsafe. And in the beginning it was very isolated incidents. We'd have like these big blow ups and then everything would be okay for a while, and then they just kept getting closer and closer together. And so in 2025, the last half of that year was a really hard year for us. We were pretty deep in survival mode, just trying to figure out what to do. Um, and so I think as parents who are looking at a situation where things are like quickly getting outside of your control, um, it can feel isolating because there's not a lot of people around us that were dealing with something like that. And so like we would like talk to people in our community group or like talk to our friends and they would be like, "Oh wow, this week my 4-year-old said no to me." And we were like, okay.
You're like, we are not talking about the same thing."
No.
Yeah, we're in a different league
Yeah.
than normal things that were happening. And I think it
Yeah.
took us a while to figure that out because we didn't have we didn't have biological children
Yeah.
to like compare it to.
Mhm.
And so we were just like, maybe this is normal parenting stuff, but this is really hard. Like maybe this is why people say parenting is so hard. But we didn't know, like, are we making the right decision? Because as we were getting to the issue of not just, oh, we don't feel like, we're parenting well or we're really struggling with this, it was like, how do we keep people safe? And safety became a big issue that, um, you know, if my family was going to bed, everyone in their own beds, after a huge issue, a huge meltdown, that was like the new, like, oh, thank goodness. Like we were successful today because we're all home, we're all safe, and everything's okay. A lot of trauma on the side there. like, uh, not secondary trauma either. Primary trauma for my husband and I.
What I'm sure are you're mostly dealing with is this one child and then the others are affected, or are you dealing with some big behaviors in more than one child?
We were dealing with big behaviors in another child at the same time as well. However, in hindsight, looking back, we're pretty sure it was them processing what they were seeing at home, at school. So, like, there were some really big behaviors at school happening. And like, we were at a point where we're like, are we gonna have to pull this kid out and like homeschool? And we just didn't know what to do. But then things got a little bit better. We kind of were able to work through some things and look back at it and realize, like, oh, okay, like there was a lot of processing happening in their little brain. And school was a safe place for them. They have great support at school. And so he was, kind of working through that.
So when you said you were in survival mode and maybe now you're kind of coming out of that a little bit. I mean, you said 2025, so we're not that far into 2026, but a little bit. What were some of the things that where did you turn? Like what really started to help you?
Um, Talking about it, for so long, we kept everything very close because we were trying to protect this child's privacy and reputation. We didn't really know, like, what we were supposed to do. Like, there didn't seem like there were any, like, clear right answers, and so for a long time, it was a lot of uncertainty. But I think what really helped was being able to talk about it, um, with trusted people, but also, like, getting help, getting the right resources. We are very fortunate to have a strong mental health care provider in our region. We had 2 hospitalizations within a month. We had crisis therapists. We are now have an in-home behavioral therapist who's working like with the family. Um, and that was really like the turning point because we were just trying to manage it on our own and with our amazing therapist. She would, take our calls late at night. She would even like drive out to our house to de-escalate the child. Um, but we were just like holding on for so long. And then once we finally were able to get that extra help and get that extra support, um, it kind of felt like, okay, this is not just on us. There are lots of people who have their eyes on this child who are working for the good of this child. And we can kind of like let go of our white knuckle grip on this situation. And that's not to say we're not still dealing with issues. Thankfully, they have not been as extreme, but we had a big blow up over the weekend. And it was like, oh boy, here we go again. And that's where that like predictive, like your brain's like, oh, last time this happened, so it's going to happen again. And now, there's going to be all these issues again. But having gone through it and been supported through it, that made all the difference. And I have an amazing therapist as well. Like, she is an EMDR therapist. She's a believer, and definitely could not have made it through without the skills that I learned to grow my window of tolerance to handle these really
Mhm.
extreme behaviors.
I think that I think you are so, wise to have gotten therapy for yourself as well, and that's such a missed piece. Even though it's talked about now, like, "Oh, get therapy," I still find that so many families, the parents themselves don't prioritize it, and, I'm with you as well. I also go to therapy and do EMDR, and I mean, it is a like game changer because yes, your child needs support 100%, but if we are not regulated and supported enough to be able to support them, then I mean, we're just throwing things in the I mean, it's just chaos.
Mhm.
Mhm.
For sure.
So I'm really glad that, you've gotten the ability like you've been able to get these supports. Do you did you know where to find them? Like how did you go about a lot of families I talk to, they don't even know where to find these, resources. So like how did you stumble upon all of these helpful resources?
For us, it was our pediatrician. So our pediatrician had been managing my child's medication, and we were seeing some like really worrying things popping up. And they put in the referral to the mental health arm um, of care in our region. And they called me and got us set up for an appointment. And then a week and a half later, my child was hospitalized for a week. Um, so yeah, I would say start with your pediatrician. And then if you have a therapist, ask them, what is available for acute care, crisis care, in our region, because, we ended up in the hospital a couple of times and they couldn't really do much for us. And so if you can get it before you reach that emergency part, I think there's a lot more resources available.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's really good. And so much of this that I'm hearing you say is like we can plan and we can prepare for some of this preemptive, you're bringing siblings home, you know a bit about their story and on and on. How much do you think you really knew from like your home study and kind of the process with your agency? Like did you have any idea of what you could expect? And like any support, and not to like talk down your agency at all. It's just to kind of give a full picture of what did you expect and then how has it played out in the last few years?
Well, we were told, "Don't trust the files." Like,
Hmm.
whatever file
Fair.
you get, it's not gonna have everything in there, and it might even have, untrue things in there. And so, we had that sort of expectation of, this may not be the full picture. And I think our agency did a good job kind of giving us, like, a wide range of, these are things that could happen. We do training for our agency for other families who are in the process, who are adopting multiple children. And we're extremely honest with them. Like, sometimes I'm like, why have they not taken us off the list yet? Because we don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important. I think it's so important to be able to say, like, it's not rainbows and fairy tales. Like, it really isn't. Like, there are really intense highs and there can be really intense lows. And I know that's not everybody's experience with it. There's a family that we know that, like, it has barely impacted their family. They've just like gone on with life. And I'm like, wow. Like, wow. That's just not our story. And so I do think it is helpful to get that wide range of experiences and to know every family is going to be different. Every situation is going to be different. but for families to really think through, like, okay, like, what are the resources that are available for this sort of thing? And if you're still in the process, to make sure that you have all those phone numbers written down, because when you are in the moment and you're in fight or flight, your brain is like mush. Like, there's no like, oh, let
Yeah.
me Google this number. Like, it's like, oh, so I think that's a really important piece, because even though that may not be everyone's story, I do think it's important to at least consider that, especially if you have an older child or a neurodivergent child.
Do you think that, like, is there something that you wish someone would have said or done before that would have better prepared you for the possibility of what you have encountered?
I think it would have been really helpful if I was told to shift my definition of success to safety. Because I know as moms, we put a lot on ourselves of like expectations, like, I need to have this done, this needs to be done. But in the season of crisis, you like the bar goes really low. If everyone is safe, you are successful. You are being a good mom if everyone is safe. Because for a long time, I felt like I was just failing at everything. And looking back, I would give myself a big hug and say, if your family is safe, you're a good mom. I wish someone had taught me how to create a safety plan. It's a 4 to 5 step plan that you can follow. It's talked about, agreed upon before the actual crisis happens. For ours, it's a 4 step plan. It's remove the audience, so siblings go somewhere else. We try to try to regulate the child, and then we have 988, which is the crisis and suicide line. Uh, and until I called it, I felt kind of intimidated about it, but it's just a calm, trained adult on the other end of the line who can kind of talk you through some things and ask some questions. And in that moment where, like, I'm kind of
Mhm.
freaking out, having that calm person on the phone is such a game changer. And you can call it anytime. And then our last resort would be 911, which we have had to call before. Um, so knowing how to make that and making that ahead of time, even though like we had talked about it a little bit before, um, I wish somebody had like told me like, no, really, write down the phone numbers.
Yeah.
Make this, something that you can follow when you're freaking out, because I have freaked out before.
Yeah.
Understandably so. I mean, yeah, there's a even though you feel like you're isolated in this or have felt like that, there are so many people who have this
So many
experience,
people.
and whether they share their stories publicly or not, that's just the reality of it. And whether their children, I mean, some of them are not even adopted or not even through foster care or whatever it may be. Like yeah, there's a lot of people who have gone through very, very similar things, even if not exactly the same.
Yes, and I have friends who have shared, not obviously not details, but shared about things that have happened, and it has helped me to know, like, okay, like, this is happening elsewhere. And even worse, like, I'm not at all like saying like we've seen the worst of the worst. I know stories that have happened that are worse than our story. But I mean, it is a really scary place to be when you don't feel safe in your own home. Like, that's a hard place to be as a parent, because you're like, I don't even know if I can keep myself safe, much
Right.
less my other children and this child who is in crisis.
Can you talk a little bit about what that emotional journey was for yourself in having to work through, this is not how I pictured motherhood? Because I'm sure this is not how you pictured motherhood.
Well, I will say it is still in progress. Even though I'm talking about last year, Um, we're still, like I said, we're still kind of in it. And I would say one of the first things would be having a safe place to grieve that deficit. Well, I won't say deficit, the difference.
That
Um,
expectation versus
yes,
Mhm.
reality, right?
exactly. Um, so like for me, that's my husband, my therapist. My mom has been incredibly supportive to me. She knows everything. God bless my mom. I call her every day.
No.
But having that safe place to process those things is really important because if you don't process it with someone else, you're going to do it on your child. And
Mm,
it's not their job to hold your emotions. Um, Hopefully they're learning that like their actions do have do affect other people, but not in a sense of like, this is all your fault. Like that's, some days, some days I can feel that way. But after I process it and get through it, I'm like, okay, no, it's not their fault. We're working on it. They're working on it. We're going to get through it. So safe place. And then I would say, um, EMDR therapy, going back to that, because especially for like these really physical things that happen as a response to extreme behaviors. I'm so grateful that I did not have to stay stuck in those feelings. Hypervigilance is a hard one to break, especially because we're still kind of needing to be vigilant. But I have hope that one day, like, once we're out of this season, I'm going to be able to move through that and get past it. Uh, and then I would also say, like, allowing room for the grief. It is hard to live what we're living, but I know that it is even harder for my child.
mm,
So I have a lot of grief that they even have to deal with this. It's not their fault. They lived through things that no child should have to experience. And so even though like it can be hard to be compassionate, I mean, there's blocked care is when, your brain is like, nope, I'm done. Like I can't be compassionate. And if that is anybody who's listening, I have great compassion for you too, because I've been there where you're just like, I can't handle anymore. Um, but coming back to that knowledge that we are picking up pieces that we didn't break, but they didn't break them either, and it's not their fault. And that has gotten us through those like hard emotions around like, wow, this does not look like what I imagined, but it's certainly not what my child would imagine for themselves either.
mhm,
Yeah, it really goes back to like how you even kind of opened us up at the beginning of this podcast of talking about, just where your heart is at in these big behaviors of, my child didn't choose the things that happened to them. Obviously, I would not have ever chosen these things for them. And here we are, and we're working through it and living through it. So yeah, I'm really, really thankful for you sharing. And I know there's probably some listeners who are like, we want to know more details. We want to know whatever that might be, whether they're nosy or they want to, like commiserate with you.
Yeah.
And I think for someone who's feeling like that, like just what you had said of like finding those safe people who you may need to share all the details, whether it's a therapist
mhm,
who it's very protected or it's, a totally like outside party, whatever that might look like. Um, but I think there is a helpful part of all of this of just being able to say like, today I felt unsafe because these things happened. So yeah, if there's someone who's listening who's feeling like that, find your safe people or your safe
find your
place
safe
for
people.
that.
And they may not understand it,
Sure.
but if if they are willing to listen and hold space for you to talk about it, um, that's gold right there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can relate to the, just holding the grief of, we talk about expectations versus reality a lot in kind of a playful way or like a really minor way, but there is a really major way as well where you have to just grieve what you thought life would look like. Regardless if it's a child and their behavior, a place that you thought you were going to live, a husband you thought you were gonna have, whatever it may be. There are visions that we have, and we often romanticize them, and we forget that we do live in a broken world. And I think, just what you're saying, like holding that grief, having some space there to just grieve and say, yeah, this is not how it was meant to be. And that sucks, And then, can you even tell us a little bit when and maybe you're not there yet, I don't know, but, even moving past the grief, like some things that we can, you know, the little things that we can be encouraged from. I'm thinking even from your story, I'm thinking, man, yes, I'm sure that's that grief of this isn't what I expected, but there's also just this, this bright smile and the wow, I am the safe person that they can, they feel comfortable to express these feelings toward. Like, what a gift, to be that safe. Are there other things that you have found encouragement in those moments?
I'm I think, not taking things personally, um, even though that sounds like a negative thing. But just to say, like, their brain is not online right now. I'm not gonna take that personally. Um, I think that is something that I come back to often. Um, Seeing them succeed in even small ways, um, like, yesterday, it was something about an apple and not wanting to eat the apple, and I was like, "We're going to have an issue over this little apple. Is it worth pushing the envelope to get at least one fruit in their body today?" Um, like, that's a lot of what parenting is in this state of, like, how worth it? Like, how important is this?
Mhm.
Um, but at the end of the encounter, ate the apple. And even though it seemed like a really small thing, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
they ate the apple. They exhibited this teeny tiny piece of trust that, okay, mom might be looking out for me here. I'm going to eat the apple, even though I really don't want to. So finding those like little baby steps that can be hard to miss and be like, well, that's just like the bare minimum. Hey, if we can do the bare minimum and everybody goes to sleep in their own bed safe at night, like we are we're in a good place.
Yeah. Well, and those foundations are so important, right? Like it starts there, but it doesn't end there. An apple today becomes a salad in a few years, like you don't know what will come from that, that tiny bite. Or maybe not even a fruit thing, but just a big trust thing later, you know.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, Kristi, thank you so much for sharing so openly. Yeah, I want to let Laura talk a little bit about your book and just kind of like your hobby. We talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but we both love being in book clubs and you're actually an author, so I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I know. I'm super excited. You guys, we love like Christy is clearly an amazing mom. To just have been going through all this and I'm sure you don't feel that way. I get
Yeah.
it, but truly, even to be seeking out the help that you have just
Mhm.
points you in like you are literally in a different category than yeah, like you care, you're trying, and that's an amazing gift to your children. And I love that you also have this like creative outlet for yourself in writing. and she had mentioned before that we were like, oh, what a great like relief for our readers, this fun little light read. She's like, well, it's not really a light read. um,
We know trauma around here, and we also know how to write it.
you know what? You write what you know, okay? Um, yeah, but if you're a listener and you also share a love of books and of historical fiction and maybe aren't scared of a little drama, um, then you should definitely go on Amazon and check out Kristi's book. So that's Kristi, Kristi Powell. And then check out some of her books. And really, Kristi, we really, really appreciate you talking with us. We've been looking for a mom that would be open to sharing for a little while now, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of moms that we know of, and understandably so, they're a little afraid to share their story. Whether it's because they're still in the trenches or whatever is going on. And so we feel for those moms that aren't ready to share, and this episode is definitely for them too. So we thank you so much for sharing.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed talking to you ladies today.
All right, and you guys, we will be back next week. And if anything we've said today has made you laugh, cry, or feel seen, please share this episode with a friend. Talk soon.